Well, good morning, everybody. Like I said, I'm Grant Saum, the Mid-South RCM, and today we're going to start cover just a little bit about what the cotton research and promotion does and a little bit of the backstory behind that. So there's kind of two parts of the research and promotion program, and the Cotton Board is, I guess, the ones that collects the assessment. So back in 1966, when a group of cotton producers decided to band together to promote their fiber instead of other man-made fibers started coming onto the market and really eating into their market share as far as clothing and other things go as far as production. So the cotton industry folks banded together and wanted to create this organization to be able to fight against that. So the Cotton Board also administers the program. So we collect all the assessments and then we contract out with Cotton Incorporated, who carries out the research. We also communicate with stakeholders as just like yourselves to ensure that you're understanding of what's going on with the program, as well as with your money that you pay into the program. So like I said, Cotton Incorporated is the one that actually carry out the research. They also promote the cotton to consumers and they create the demand and profitability as well. So they also have different, their headquarters is in Cary, North Carolina, and they also have different headquarters in New York and Mexico City, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. So they're pretty spread out and have a global view when it comes to the cotton industry. The Cotton Board also is governed by the USDA. So we have to get everything kind of approved and passed through the USDA. And we have Ms. Shether on the call as well today. So she kind of oversees the program and makes sure that what we're doing is in the best benefit to the producers. So the Cotton Board collects a per bale assessment of all upland cotton harvested and ginned in the U.S., as well as importer assessment of all the cotton content that is in those products that are imported into the U.S. So the producers make up 54% of the total assessments, whereas the importers make up roughly around 46%. So that's a pretty close to a 50-50 share. So it's been really interesting to bring on the importers and see what they can bring to the organization and kind of bring a totally different viewpoint when it comes to the importers and kind of the clothing and that side of the industry. So as a collection arm, we have maintained a compliance record or a compliance rate of 99%. So that's something that we really take pride in, and the fact that we have that communications with the gins and with the importers to make sure that everybody's kind of on board and agrees with what we're doing with the program. The 2022 budget is up $2 million from 21 for a total of an $82 million budget. So pretty excited to be able to contract out with Cotton Incorporated and have that budget in place to make sure that we continue to create the demand for cotton in the industry. So the Cotton Incorporated state research comes down to the state, which is the state support program. So 7.5% of the assessment that's collected is put back into the states in the form of the state support program. So each state is allocated these funds on the production basis. So the more cotton that you have that year, the more money that comes back to the state research programs. The funding is determined by a committee in each state, which is made up of Cotton Board and Cotton Incorporated board members, researchers, and CPOs, such as Farm Bureau, Staple Cotton, people like that. They all come together and kind of say what the research should be funding and kind of come together to make sure that we're being proactive in research and marketing when it comes to the cotton industry. the research and projects are managed by Cotton Incorporated and carried out by the research staff at the respective universities. So here's the list of some of the state support committee. Tennessee, I'm not going to read each one of those, but Tennessee and Missouri, those are mostly, like I said, the board members for Cotton Incorporated as well as the Cotton Board. So if you have any questions as far as the state support or any input as far as what program or research projects should be funded, feel free to reach out with someone either in your neck of the woods, myself, Ryan, or one of the researchers, and we'll be glad to kind of field those questions and make sure that we're being proactive when it comes to the research in your state. So that's pretty much all I have. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime you have any questions about state support or the Cotton Board or Cotton Incorporated in general. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan. If I can stop sharing.
Did that come up?
Looks
That's
good.
it.
All right, appreciate it, Grant. I'm going to go through the state support funded projects for 2021 in both Tennessee and Missouri. Given that we're covering both states, I'm not going to be able to go into any great detail with results from most of the projects, but I just want to give you general awareness of the projects that were funded and the objectives and the significance of what they're trying to address with each of these projects. And I also want to mention we do have Tyson Raper, the cotton specialist in Tennessee, and Bradley Wilson, who is the new hire with University of Missouri as their cotton specialist. And once I get to the end of each state, I'm going to give them an opportunity just to introduce themselves and say a little bit about of what's going on in each of their respective states. So definitely stay tuned for that. So Grant went through a little bit about the funding process, and that 7.5% of what comes in from a state goes back into the state support committee. It's the number, it's a 5-year Olympic average. They drop the high and low year, and it's essentially a combination of acres planted and yield. And it's just there's an equation that they come out with. And for 2021, the total funding for state support in Tennessee was $137,000. Now, this does not include Cotton Incorporated core funding, and that is a completely separate set of money that's managed by the projectors, the research directors like myself. We're looking at projects that are more national or regional in scope, and the state support committee funding really comes in and plays a significant role where there are specific local needs that may be really only impacting a single state or even in certain circumstances, a part of the state. Grant went through the producer state support committee members. So I'm not going to belabor this, but generally the voting members of the committee are going to be your state directors and alternates on Cotton Incorporated's board and the members and alternates of the Cotton Board. Each state can set up their own bylaws and can arrange their committee organization how they like. They can invite other producers and generers who are not on the other boards to also be voting members. There's also a number of other ways to participate. Just being an advisory member, you can definitely provide your opinion and what you think might be important for research in your state. Advisory members are anyone from Cotton Incorporated staff, Cotton Board staff, other growers, industry reps, other research scientists, as well as the cotton specialists in each state. So in terms of selection and accountability process for these projects, the state support committees set the priority areas for research and outreach. And after they do that, proposals are submitted by research scientists from the university. Each proposal is reviewed by the appropriate Cotton Incorporated staff for scientific merit, but ultimately the committee members have complete discretion on which projects are funded as long as it falls within the bounds of the research and promotion program. We work on an annual funding cycle. We can't commit except in certain circumstances to multi-year projects. But the committees do recognize that there is a need for scientific research to occur over multiple years. So there is an understanding that if a project is started and it's meeting its goals, that it will be funded for at least 2, if not 3 years, to make sure that you get the appropriate amount of data to make conclusions. In terms of accountability, we require both quarterly and a final annual report for each project, and they're reviewed by Cotton Incorporated staff to make sure things are on track and going as they should. These reports are also available to the state support committee members. And I will say the reports are not just required for review. If they're not submitting reports, we're not paying invoices. So we usually get a pretty high response rate in terms of reporting, because if they don't report, they don't get paid. And then we have annual meetings or biannual meetings for each state support committee, and in-person presentations on project accomplishments are made to the committee at those meetings. This is just kind of a general overview of our Ag and Environmental Research Department, the various research scientists that are responsible for each discipline. And I've got it presented this way because we also serve as the liaison to various state support committees. Dr. Ed Barnes, our engineer, has got Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Don Jones, who runs our is Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. I'm the entomologist with the group, and I'm responsible for the Mid-South states. Tom Wiedegardner has responsibility in New Mexico. Galen Morgan has got Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And Cater, who's the vice president of our department, has been handling the far west with California and Arizona. And I've got this slide in here just kind of more of as an impact of the progress that we've made as a cotton industry as a whole over the last 35 years. This is a combined effect of both core projects, state support projects, and projects that we're not even funding. Just the general positive trend in the industry in terms of reducing our environmental impact, with the added benefit that we're looking through this at a lens of improving profitability. So not only do we want to improve and reduce environmental impacts, we're doing it in a way that that is essentially increasing profitability. And so we've made very positive strides in this and over the last 35 years. And we've set a series of national goals going forward too to continue reducing these efforts and improving profitability across the board. If you want to find more information about the state support program, you can grab this QR code quickly, or if you just Google Cotton Inc. state support, it's one of the first links that'll come up. And we've got a web page on our corporate website that just has more about the projects that are funded in your state and surrounding states if you're interested to see what else is happening. We also have a grower-focused website with a lot of the information and research results that we're funding called Cotton Cultivated. Also, just Google Cotton Cultivated. It's the first thing that comes up. If you haven't been to the website, I highly recommend you do that. We just redid it for this past year. So everything on there is updated and new. And we've got a weekly weather video that comes out every Thursday that I think you'll find pretty valuable. Also, if you have any questions, you can always email me at rkurtz@cottoninc.com. So with that, I'm going to jump into the projects that are funded for Tennessee. This is just a list of the projects that were funded in 2021. I've got the principal investigator on the left side and then the title of the project on the right. But it covers a broad range of topics, everything from education, from Farm Bureau and Ag in the Classroom, insect management, disease management, pest management, all sorts of agronomic stuff, as well as looking at issues such as compaction that have a more technical and engineering role, and nutrient management. So jumping right into the projects, the first one I'll mention is with Tennessee Ag in the Classroom. This has been a project that the Tennessee State Support Committee has supported for a long time, ever since I've been with the company, as far as I can remember. It's a really good program Farm Bureau puts on because the public can be vulnerable to misinformation about the impacts of agriculture on the environment and just in general. And we're losing more and more direct contact. People don't really know a farmer anymore. And so this is critical for communication and education to reduce the impacts of misinformation. And what they're doing is providing objective information about agriculture within the school systems, and developing and providing materials to train teachers and training teachers in their use, and just maintaining a connection with those educational institutions to make sure that that agriculture is being correctly portrayed. I'll mention here, this is a cotton insect management project that was with Scott Stewart. Scott has just this past year taken over the directorship of the West Tennessee Ag Research and Extension Center. And so he's moved into more of a director position there. And they recently hired Seed Brown from LSU, who will be he'll be the new Scott in terms of insect management. Seed's done a great job at LSU, and I'm looking forward to also having an opportunity to work with him in Tennessee. And I think he's going to do a great job for y'all. But with insect management, what Scott's program was looking to do, and what Seed's going to continue to do, is looking at how to minimize the impacts of cotton pests, and doing so with judicious use of insecticides and other pest control tactics. Really just trying to make sure that IPM is implemented and is easy for all y'all on the farm, as well as looking at resistance monitoring to make sure which products are working and which ones aren't. And he's doing this basically to provide support of extension and other applied research activities for cotton insect management. We also have a project with Heather Kelly. It's a working group project that was primarily started looking at target spot. Tennessee's got one of the highest reported losses to seedling diseases of any cotton producing state, and target spot's fairly new on the scene. They're just trying to determine what the recommendations are, and the need to assure that adequate control of this disease. It's also looking at other diseases that are popping up. We had the CLRDV first reported in Tennessee in 2019. And this is really looking at just assessing the incidence and severity as it occurs. The good news is, I think there's almost uniform consensus that CLRDV is not having a significant measurable impact on yield, though it is occurring widely across the southeastern part of the Cotton Belt. And Heather's looking at, to do all this, looking at conducting a comprehensive extension cotton pathology program for Tennessee, including looking at evaluating seedling disease treatments, establishing sentinel plots, and monitoring for foliar virus diseases, as well as conducting fungicide evaluation trials. Larry Steckel needs no introduction, and you certainly don't need me to explain the significance of weed management in the Mid-South at this point. But the cost of managing these resistant weeds is a threat to cotton production in Tennessee and the rest of the Mid-South. It's easily exceeding $100 an acre at times. And Larry's trying to integrate cultural and chemical means to improve the consistency of weed management and reduce weed management costs. He's doing that by to continue an ongoing work with growers to monitor for new resistant weeds, evaluating new management systems for control of glyphosate-resistant pigweed, and developing best management practices to integrate cover crops as part of weed management program for cotton production. So kind of similar in building on that, because nothing is done in a vacuum. Larry's looking at how the impact of cover crops and how that can benefit weed management. Lori Duncan has had a new project start this year investigating soil compaction and how no-till production is impacting that. And so as production systems and labor shortages are getting larger, the equipment's getting larger and more acres are being harvested with each of these machines. And they're having to because of these shortages in labor, harvest has been shortened, and a lot of times people have been having to get in the field when it was probably a little more wet than they would have liked, and it's having an impact on compaction. And so Lori's trying to look at finding information on the effects of in-row tillage relative to no-till, and how to do that, as well as tracking vehicle and implement traffic through the field in the year to evaluate how controlled traffic plans would minimize that. And really the overall objective is to evaluate the impacts of no-till, introducing cover crops, and as well as in-row tillage on soil compaction and cotton growth on highly erodible soils in Tennessee. There's a nutrient project with Fafa Adote, really looking at evaluating the effects of foliar application timings of foliar fertilizers and with boron and zinc. Looking how does that impact fiber quality and lint yield. And what he's been seeing is there are situations where the soil test comes back that it's not deficient, that there's plenty, but they're still seeing late season symptoms. And this project is really looking at trying to sort out, can this be addressed with the use of foliar fertilizers? Dr. Avat Shakufa has also got his drought stress tolerance project. And obviously drought is one of the greatest threats to crop profitability. And what she's trying to do is really characterizing the drought status and a particular field, and trying to look at various varieties and see which ones are more drought tolerant than others, then combine that with various irrigation recommendations and regimes, and trying to figure out, what's your best bet to develop irrigation recommendations based on water saving potential among the different cotton varieties, and as well as making sure that if you're going to be planting into a rain-fed situation, that you've got the most drought tolerant variety with the best yield that you possibly can have. These are just a couple of graphs and slides showing the work that she's doing. She's doing this looking at both systems using with and without PGRs, and she's recently got a drone mounted thermal camera to get a better assessment of temperature in these plots, to really understand which ones are being under water stress and not, and then just comparing across the different varieties and irrigation timings to make sure that you have the best information possible for managing your crop. The last project is with the Extension Cotton Specialist Tyson Raper, looking at the various agronomic issues that are important to Tennessee cotton producers. And we've got Tyson on the call, and he will do a much better job of explaining his program and other issues as they are impacting Tennessee growers. So I just want to give Tyson a moment to say something to all y'all.
Thanks, Ryan, and appreciate you covering all the projects up to this point. I guess I want to start my comments by just saying these funds really compose the backbone. They're integral in the success of all of the programs that you've seen. You probably noticed in these descriptions that some of them, including mine, are almost all-encompassing. And I'm proud. I feel like these state funds touch every project that I have. Most of the funding from land grant institutions at this point will provide salary for these specialists, but beyond that, it's really up to the specialists to go secure funding and then meet the demands of that funding source. These state support funds allow us to focus, in my mind, on exactly what we need to be doing, tackling applied problems that are immediately impactful to you, and having these funds really allows us to do a much better job in each of our states. Most of these funds go to support technical assistance. So whether that's a research assistant or an extension assistant, maintain and collect data from these trials on a day-to-day basis. And again, without these funds, we simply could not complete the projects and be nearly as impactful as I believe these programs are. So my program is, again, fairly all-encompassing. We do a lot of basic agronomic research, a lot of variety testing, fertility work. A lot of these funds I actually used to kind of partner with a lot of the other project PIs that you've heard. We work with each and every one of those to try to make sure that we're delivering information that is valuable to you. So sure appreciate the time. Appreciate each of you that joined the call today. And Ryan, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Tyson. And just a quick overview of the projects that were agreed for funding in the summer meeting this past year for projects in 2022. Every project that I just mentioned was renewed for funding. So there'll be another year of each of these projects going forward this year. So switching over to Missouri, similar, slightly less level of funding. That, as I mentioned in the beginning, the difference is generally related to the number of acres and the yield. Missouri had some really good yields this year, but I think just in general the number of acres was lower than Tennessee, which would result in slightly less funding. But $123,000 were available to allocate towards projects for funding in 2021. So the projects in 2021 that were funded, we had 3 projects with Jim Heiser, all related to weed control. We had one with Earl Voorhees on soil health, and one with John Travlos on weather tools for Missouri. I'm going to hop through these in reverse order. The first one was the project on weather tools funded with John Travlos. And the objective was really to increase the accuracy and availability of weather-related management decision tools for cotton producers in Missouri. If you're not familiar with the Missouri Mesonet, I've got the web address here, and there's a picture on the right showing the counties and the locations within that county where the weather stations are located. And the simplest way to get access to this type of information is to just Google Missouri Mesonet. It'll take you right there. But they're really trying to develop a robust network of stations. Particularly, this is going to what I'm showing in the picture. There's locations all over the state, but the ones that are funded through this project are directly in the cotton producing counties. We had a project with Earl Voorhees at USDA looking at how to incorporate cover crops into a cotton production system and how that impacts your ability to rotate between crops, and also, cotton is in general without cover crops it's a pretty low residue system, but introducing cover crops into this can provide additional residue that helps to improve and stabilize soil health. And Earl is looking at this, looking at how it impacts productivity across very spatially variable soils. Jim Heiser is the weed scientist. He's looking at various projects on weed control, as well as looking at the potential for injury from glufosinate applications when mixed with insecticides and other PGRs. This is well known, and it's been shown across a range of different products, but definitive trends aren't clear. And so what Jim's really trying to do is determine if the likelihood of injury to young cotton can occur from applications of glufosinate tank mixed with other products that you might be spraying at a similar time. He's also looking at the impacts of tank mixtures with dicamba and 2,4-D. There can be, antagonism. Provide some when you apply both graminicides and broadleaf herbicides at the same time. Jim's really just trying to look at how these tank mixtures impact grass control, and if there's a better way to do this so that you don't have any slips when you're trying to control both broadleafs and grass. The last project is kind of everything but the kitchen sink. We've had significantly increasing amounts of herbicide resistant weeds across the Mid-South. And we're getting to the point, we've got core projects with Galen Morgan, as well as this state support project with Jim Heiser, looking at mechanical weed control. If we come to a situation to where resistance is just gotten completely out of control, we may be having to implement mechanical means to control weeds, and we want to be prepared to do that in the event that we have to do that. So he's looking at comparing the effectiveness of several mechanical weed removal and tillage implements, and he's using several of these in conjunction with both directed and hooded herbicide applications. And this was the first year of the project, so I don't have any concrete results to show you, but just a couple of pictures of the types of things that they're looking at that have been used in other crops that can really, right along the row, mechanically remove weeds. And he's also got a couple of these systems that it's, injuring the weed as well as spraying a directed herbicide on it, just to see if that might be a better or more effective method for controlling resistant weeds. At the summer meeting, there were several projects that were identified for funding. Renewing this project that I just mentioned for Jim's was one. Earl Voorhees with soil health, and the weather tools from John Travelos is also being considered for refunding. There were several projects that the committee was interested in funding that need to have the objectives modified slightly. And there's also been 2 new hires within the system, with Justin Calhoun coming on as the soils cropping systems specialist. And Bradley Wilson has just started earlier this year as the new cotton specialist. So if the committee members, if y'all are on the phone, be looking for an email from me in the next day or two. We're trying to line up a time to have a meeting this February to consider new projects for funding for 2022. And we have Bradley Wilson on the meeting with us now. And I'd just like to give Bradley an opportunity to introduce himself to the growers in Missouri.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. Well, again, I'm Bradley Wilson. I just started here January 1st as a new cotton specialist. Looking forward to working with our growers. Again, I'd like to echo a lot of the things that Tyson said, being able to secure funding and that has an impact to our Missouri growers. I guess I also want to be able to, maybe plug this, is that we do have a cotton meeting January 28th, this Friday, starting at 8:30. So I'd love to see you all there. And again, thank you.
Thanks, Bradley. So again, just kind of to wrap things up, if you do have questions, more questions about the state support program, you can Google Cotton Inc. state support, and that's where the information you can find is housed. And then we've also got more production related information for across the belt on our cotton cultivated website. So I highly encourage you to go visit that. It's been recently updated, and I think you'll find it quite valuable. And the last thing I want to do, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I did just want to put a plug in for the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, all the environmental gains that we've made over the last 35 years in cotton production, this is becoming more important than ever to brands and retailers. And they're wanting ways to quantify and verify that these measurements are accurate. And the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol is a system that is created for U.S. cotton growers to make sure that the good work that y'all are doing is being conveyed in the best way possible. So if you're not familiar with this, it'd be really great if you'd go to the website, read a little bit about it. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to your RCM, or also contact anyone at Cotton Incorporated anytime, or the National Cotton Council, and we'd be more than happy to talk through this with y'all. So, and with that, that's the end. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.